In a patch of montane forest in the Monteverde area of Costa Rica, a hollow in a tree is distinctively marked by blackened bark. This looks like the result of a fire charring the tree in the past, but it is actually something else: the bloody guano of a colony of vampire bats roosting inside the tree. Each night they fly out into the forest, or due to deforestation, pastures, to find a large mammal. Then they will bite it with their sharp teeth and lap up the blood that pools as a result. When the sun rises, they will return here. These strange hematophagus mammals are noted for their behavior of actually sharing some of their food with other bats in the colony, regurgitating blood into the mouths of close kin or even unrelated bats that they roost with. Blood-drinking bats seem so strange compared with organism lifestyles in temperate ecosystems. And strange lifestyles are not in short supply in the tropics. Army ants roam the forest floor, not even making permanent nests as they score the leaf litter for prey, while a multitude of animals that follow or live among them both opportunistically and as obligates try to steal their food. Strangler figs are trees that begin life growing out of bird guano on the branch of a host tree, only to slowly grow over and engulf it, eventually cutting off nutrients and killing its host, which rots away, leaving the center of the fig tree hollow. Even the webs of spiders have been colonized by other animals looking for an easy meal. These life strategies are very rare or altogether non-existent in the temperate regions of the planet, and hint at a deeper truth. The tropics just have more species than places further towards the poles. This phenomena has a name: the Latitude Diversity Gradient, or LDG, and it is one of the most recognizable features in biogeography. Quite simply, the LDG just states that latitude is related to biodiversity. Along the equator there are the most organisms living alongside each other, and this begins to fall off heading towards the poles, where biodiversity is the lowest. But why? A host of hypotheses have been proposed as to why there are more species in the tropics. These include random distributions of species latitudinal ranges having the most overlap in the middle latitudes, something called the mid-domain hypothesis, or that the more intense solar activity in the equatorial regions increase productivity, leading to more species. But most ideas end up boiling down to the idea that the tropics are both cradles and museums. The tropics really do appear to be more productive. They are often warmer and wetter. They are called rainforests for a reason. These conditions are thought to decrease generation times and increase mutations, leading to more speciation events, a crucible of evolution. At the same time, they also seem to have lower extinction rates, acting as a museum of Earth's biodiversity. This idea can be extended into the far past, showing that most organism groups seem to have first appeared and radiated during times the world was more tropical. This forms the basis of the niche conservatism hypothesis, which postulates that species usually retain their ancestral ecological preferences. This leads to a tropics where species are around longer and give rise to more species, with only a handful of pioneers leaving to live in the temperate and polar regions. It also has to be stated that large-scale glaciation events, until recently, left large portions of the modern temperate regions locked under ice. And only after the retreat of the last ice age have vast areas of North America and Europe become habitable to life again. The niche conservatism hypothesis also explains why there are tropical independent radiations of certain groups. Bear diversity is highest far north of the equator, and the bulk of penguin diversity is found far south. These are groups who adapted to colder climates and have pretty much stuck to them. For the majority of species, though, the tropics are home, and a traveler in these lands quickly sees there is definitely something special about the modern tropics. Today, though, the tropics and the great amounts of life they contain are under unprecedented threat. The rainforests have been disappearing at a rapid pace, first driven by logging of hardwoods, but increasingly creating land for agriculture. With the current rates of deforestation, the islands of Indonesia and Papua New Guinea could be clear-cut in under 2 decades. The mighty Amazon rainforest sees thousands of square kilometers clear-cut each year. Deforestation is bad for biodiversity because each organism requires a certain amount of nutrients and space to live and raise a new generation. When that shrinks, fewer individuals can make a living, and if patches of forest become too small, entire species can no longer live in areas because there is not enough food and room for a viable population to remain. In Southeast Asia, the rapid deforestation is highly driven by the palm oil industry. Palm oil comes from the African oil palm, Elaeus guineensis. This tree produces bunches of bright orange fruit that contain a thick vegetable oil. They yield a lot more of this oil than other oilseed crops, and this oil is so versatile it can be used in literally everything. Food, biofuels, and even cosmetics. The stuff is literally everywhere. As this industry expands, tracts of rainforest are cut down, the old-growth timber used to supplement the initial costs of starting up a plantation. As the forests fall under the might of industry, so too do the unique animals that call islands like Borneo home. The palm oil industry is the greatest threat to the orangutan, the only great ape outside of Africa, and a highly recognizable animal with its shaggy reddish hair draping off its body. It is not the only creature under direct threat. A whole world of birds, fish, reptiles, small mammals, and amphibians are all in grave danger if high rates of deforestation continue. Entire habitats are under threat. One of the most important might be the Borneo peat swamp forests, which are found in lowland areas where the geology is just right to allow a place where water flows out of them, but not into them. They have extremely nutrient-poor waterlogged soils and are anaerobic, allowing leaves and fallen wood to not decompose, which we will come back to in a few minutes when we discuss the importance of rainforests. When the palm oil or other agricultural industry goes into these peat swamp forests, the water is drained and the forest is burned, a practice known as slash-and-burn agriculture. When dried, the accumulation of biomass over thousands of years, the peat easily burns, resulting in gigantic fires that release a huge amount of carbon into the atmosphere in the form of haze. It is important to remember that the palm oil crop is currently critical to the economy of several Southeast Asian countries, and the people here deserve a way to make money to provide for their families. And it is important for us in wealthier Western countries to remember this when trying to address or aid in solving these issues. There are attempts to have more sustainable palm oil that have smaller impacts on the rainforest environment. Unfortunately, only a small percentage of palm oil is considered sustainable, and many large markets outside Europe and North America show little interest in purchasing the slightly more expensive certified sustainable palm oil. And this market pressure is the biggest challenge to having more sustainable practices adopted by palm oil growers. This is why being an educated consumer is so important. Your purchase is a vote for what kind of products you want and what practices you want to see in the production of these products. With that in mind, and how prevalent palm oil is in products, seeming almost randomly distributed in food and cosmetics, I wanted to play a little game where I asked some people if a particular product contains palm oil or not. This brings us to a new segment. Is a product pro-Orang-Utan or no Orang-Utan? The rules are simple. I will ask a real person if a product contains palm oil or not. We will be focusing on candy, but palm oil is found in so many products. You feeling confident?
I'm gonna do great. I'm ready.
Okay, let's begin. Skittles.
Do not contain palm oil.
They have palm oil.
What?
You're wrong. They're Mars Incorporated food. There will be a lot of Mars products here. I want to say that on the Mars website, they say they want to have all deforestation-free palm oil by the end of 2020. So we will have to see. Okay, product number 2. Peanut M&Ms.
Those are no orangutan. I know that for a fact.
Yes, peanut M&Ms are no orangutan, and they are also a Mars product. Okay. Regular M&Ms.
Those are PRORANG-UTAN.
Yes, remarkably, they do not contain palm oil. But I do want to say that Mars also has a really bad track record with its chocolate, which is generally grown on the west coast of Africa, where plantations deforest national parks in Ghana and the Ivory Coast, and is often grown by child slaves. And Mars is really bad with this and only able to trace around 24% of the chocolate it buys, so they have no idea how much they contribute to these problems. Red vines.
PRORANG-UTAN.
Yeah, that's correct. Like, they only have like 6 ingredients.
Yeah, there can't be anything.
Okay. Trader Joe's, JoJo's.
No, they have to be pro. They have to be pro. No, I see your face. No, they have to be pro.
They have palm oil. I do want to say that Trader Joe's is a little more of a random assortment of what has palm oil and what doesn't have palm oil. It's good to know that their shampoo doesn't contain palm oil, which is a problem that other hair products have. Okay, Twix bars.
PRORANG-UTAN.
It has palm oil. It doesn't matter if it's right Twix or left Twix. Created by Mars. And so if we think about that, they can't track back their chocolate. That means on 4 Twix bars in those 2 packages, the company only knows a little under 1 of those where the chocolate covering the bar came from. Okay, Reese's Peanut Butter Cups.
No orangutan.
Surprisingly, they don't have palm oil. Hershey's, like Mars, can only track where some of their chocolate comes from, about 50%. So they're better than Mars, but still half the chocolate could be grown by child slaves in Africa. Like Mars, they are trying to get sustainable palm oil and use less of it. Just they've been doing that since 2014. But a lot of peanut butter cups contain palm oil, like most of them. Yes, so you got 3 out of 7 right. You win the knowledge that you know more about the palm oil in these random candy products than Mars knows in its entire chocolate chain.
Oh God, that's so sad.
Palm oil, though, is not the only driver of rainforest loss. In Brazil, it is cattle farming that threatens the future of the mighty Amazon and is responsible for about 80% of the deforestation here. And like palm oil, it is driven by foreign markets. Your purchase, your vote. If you're buying beef, get it local to you, but even that may not be entirely without harming the Amazon. Brazil also clears forests to grow soybeans, which are used as feed for livestock, and not just for beef, which means that unless it is raised without the use of soybean feed, any piece of meat at the market could be contributing to the destruction of the Amazon. Those fires in 2019 that brought deforestation in the Amazon to the attention of the media were driven by slash-and-burn agricultural clearing in the Amazon's dry season to raise cattle and grow soy. Mining is another activity that threatens rainforests, even in protected areas. Illegal gold mining occurs in many rainforests around the world, including the famous Corcovado National Park on the Osa Peninsula of Costa Rica, a place famed for its biodiversity, but it is thought some 38% of the park has been disturbed by gold mining at some point. Another valuable material can also sometimes be found under the world's tropical forests. Oil. One of the world's most biologically rich areas, a part of the Amazon basin at the base of the Andes in Ecuador, protected in the Yasuni National Park, home to stunning biodiversity and even uncontacted tribes of humans, has an oil field beneath its forest floor that is being drilled and exploited, with platforms on the edges and even inside the park. The story of how this came to be is actually quite interesting and will be important in the next part of this video. The great tragedy of the tropics is that while they are rich in nature and biodiversity, they contain many developing countries, trying to catch up with the developed nations of the temperate zones. Exploiting natural resources like minerals and oil gives these countries the ability to grow their economies and develop. It is unfair that these countries must be left behind in the global economy because they have irreplaceable biodiversity. This is the struggle with tropical conservation. Ecuador, though, which is known for pro-environment policies, had a plan to avoid the destructive forces of mining and continue to develop the country. The plan, the Yasuni ITT initiative, was quite simple. Ask the international community to pay for the oil not being pumped out of the Amazon. The oil reserve under the park was valued at some $7.2 billion, and the initiative asked for half of that from contributions by the international community. Though many prominent conservationists, actors, and activists fought to get the donations in, Ecuador received a mere $13 million with only $200 million more promised. The Yasuni ITT initiative failed, and so drilling in the Amazon had to begin. Ecuador did not only try running the Yasuni ITT initiative to protect the wonderful biodiversity of Yasuni National Park. The oil beneath the jungle will eventually become 410 million metric tons of carbon dioxide in the planet's atmosphere. This carbon dioxide will interact with light entering Earth's atmosphere and lead to a warmer planet. This has been happening on a widespread scale since man first started burning coal on an industrial scale, and average temperatures are now ever increasing. The rainforest, though, offers one potential solution to stop this. They act as natural net carbon sinks, taking carbon dioxide and incorporating it into biomass. This is why slash-and-burn agriculture is such a huge issue. It releases carbon that is being sequestered back into the atmosphere, undoing the work of these forests. Some of the best carbon sinks are those peat bog forests being destroyed for palm oil plantations. Because dead plant material does not decompose, it accumulates, locked in peat for thousands of years. And so burning them is very bad for carbon sequestration. It is likely any solution to mitigate or minimize the effect of the release of greenhouse gases will involve tropical forests. This leaves us with an issue. The rainforests are needed to mitigate industrial activity in wealthy temperate countries, meaning the people of the tropics cannot develop their economies in the same way. This is unacceptable. The rainforest, though, again, provides a tantalizing solution. Medicine. The rainforest is such an intense place with so many herbivores that plants have to defend themselves. They have created many novel secondary metabolites in their arms race against all manner of grazers, chewers, browsers, and seed predators. Some of these compounds can be taken and used by humans to fight disease. Vampire bat saliva has an anticoagulant compound that can increase blood flow in stroke patients, and in the heavily deforested forests of Madagascar, a small periwinkle flower contains compounds now used to fight cancer. The problem is that the impoverished country of Madagascar got to see very little economic gain from this discovery, with Western pharmaceutical companies raking in all the cash. This type of exploitation is called biopiracy, and it is all around bad for human rights and protecting the environment. Unfortunately, getting a drug from the rainforest medicine cabinet is difficult, taking years of development and research, likely ending up with the drug being abandoned, with perhaps 1 in 20,000 promising compounds making it to being an FDA-approved drug. The pharmaceutical companies, though, still make money from that development through grants. The thing is, only the final steps of being in clinical trials really needs to be done in a developed country. What if all the research and development was done in the country of origin, making sure people in tropical countries can make real money from protecting their forests, while also stimulating the economy of the home country? Such a program was started in Panama and seems to show some signs of working to help protect the country's rainforest. How do we save the rainforests and the biodiversity they harbor before it is too late? It seems an impossible task, but there are some solutions that seek to ensure a future for both tropical ecosystems and the people who live in and around them. One approach that both takes into account the need to protect wildlife but also give local people an income to live on is agroforestry. The idea is to have a plantation of a crop in a forest. Similarly, silvopasture incorporates trees and shrubs into grazing lands. Many of the studies on how agroforest affects biodiversity have been done on birds. It has to be noted that to form even mixed flocks of birds, these systems need at least 25% of canopy cover, and 40% canopy cover is the minimum requirement of the Rainforest Alliance, an organization that focuses on tropical conservation, to give the products of these agroforestry systems bird-friendly certification. These systems are also important since birds migrate, and many of the summer migrants in the north winter in tropical ecosystems, often joining tropical mixed flocks, and are similarly affected by loss of canopy. Agroforestry, though, is not a perfect solution and often only can retain some species, and usually not the more forest-dependent ones. Shade coffee seems to be the most heavily studied agroforest system, with most studies being conducted in the neotropics, where coffee is not native. In shade coffee systems investigated in Africa, where coffee is a native species, the story is a little different. While bird species that are more specialized are rarer, one study found all the understory species in Ethiopian shade coffee agroforests that are found in natural forests, indicating that it is perhaps the most biodiversity-friendly coffee on Earth. Agroforest, though, is still a compromise from pristine primary forest, and all these systems must be monitored into the future to make sure agroforestry systems are not just acting as ecological traps for certain species, unsuitable habitat they ultimately cannot survive in. Even so, agroforest could be used effectively to connect patches of protected forest together, essentially creating larger populations of many species. This compromise between agriculture and protected forests, though, also gives the farmers benefits they otherwise would not get. Birds eat pest insects, and therefore, if some canopy is retained, farmers do not have to buy expensive and toxic pesticides to spray on crops. The certifications of products from agroforestry systems can also be sold at a premium, which means the farmers can make more money and have better lives as a result, and hire other locals, improving the conditions of their lives, perhaps keeping them from pursuing more destructive ways of making money. Along with the compromising but still ecologically important agroforestry systems, primary forest also needs to be protected from the chainsaws and other modifications of man, to ensure that some of the more specialized species of the tropics continue to exist. It must also be stated agroforestry does not always work with a given crop, say palm oil, which requires all the sun and nutrients to have high yields, requiring that in the parts of the world where this crop is grown, there needs to be more protection on their forests and have intensive agriculture on lands already cleared and degraded. Sparing forests from destruction, though, is difficult and can often need a miracle. Fortunately, the odd conservation miracle is known to happen. On the eastern side of the Tiburon Mountains of Costa Rica lies a rainforest valley, Peñas Blancas. Though today it may not seem like it, this lush valley was once threatened like many parts of the tropics. In the 60s, mining interests had descended, looking for mineral deposits and sulfur. They established a series of mining camps connected to the outside world by wide trails. People from the Monteverde area on the Pacific slope had also crossed over and established small homesteads in the middle of the forest. Monteverde was already a hub of tropical conservation as its world-famous cloud forest preserve was expanding to cover more land, and biologists were studying the area. Some began to enter this valley and discover its high diversity of bird and plant life. While the mining company had long withdrawn from the valley, a community of people were established despite the poor roads. In the early 1980s, they began asking the government to improve the road or buy them out. While in nearby areas more land clearing was occurring, concerned residents and biologists in Monteverde decided to form the Monteverde Conservation League in 1985 that would work to preserve areas of the Pacific and Atlantic slope of the Tiburon Range, and they had their sights on raising funds to buy the Peñas Blancas Valley. The fundraising became very successful. The World Wildlife Fund in Canada ran an acre-by-acre Save the Rainforest campaign. As funds came in, the League began purchasing properties, unfortunately having to pay people who had done more deforestation more, as they wanted to receive money for their hard work improving the land. In 1987, a very special fundraising campaign was launched. A U.S. biologist was visiting a rural primary school in Sweden, giving the children a slideshow on how amazing rainforests are and how damaging deforestation is. The kids were so moved and concerned, they decided to raise money to try and save it by holding your typical school fundraisers of bake sales and school plays. They got enough money to buy 6 hectares for the league, but this act inspired more children in Sweden to also raise funds, and the Swedish government agreed to match the money raised, leading to a $100,000 donation in a year. By 1992, some 2 million had been donated from Sweden to the Monteverde Conservation League. An organization named the Children's Rainforest was formed to collect the donations and transfer them to Costa Rica. Soon, more children's rainforest organizations were formed in other countries, and beyond Costa Rica helped protect forests in Belize, Panama, Ecuador, and Thailand. Because of this fundraising by the children of the world, the forests of the Peñas Blancas and the other areas purchased by the Monteverde Conservation League were named the Bosque Eternal de los Niños, or the Children's Eternal Rainforest. In all, some 22,000 hectares of forest. This includes the beautiful forests of the Atlantic Slope and the unique rain shadow forests of the Pacific side in the Bajo del Tigre Preserve, which is one of the last remaining areas of this kind of forest left in the Monteverde area, as much of it has been converted into coffee plantations and urban areas. The story of how the Children's Eternal Rainforest was founded gives some hope to the future of tropical forests. If anyone watching this had an opportunity to contribute to this historic campaign back in the day, I thank you. Protecting the world's rainforests is more important than ever, with the ongoing biodiversity crisis and the looming threat of climate change. I think, though, with the success of Ben, the promise of agroforestry, and the growing awareness of the need for conservation, there is some hope for the future.